I didn't mention this in the last video, but many of these students are at college and focusing on majors that require them to do a lot of computation. Glenn, in our interview, explained how many of her courses worked and how seeking sustainability was a little different.
There is always one solution, and there's an algorithm that we have to follow step by step to get there, so it's a very linear process, and we learn about how to figure out how to get to the next step. Whereas this class, I feel like, takes us back and makes it look at the whole problem in general, knowing that we cannot solve anything unless we understand the problem as a whole. So I feel like it challenges me more to think, but more thinking on my view of the world, my view on culture, values, opinions, other people's perspectives, and how that can help me help sustainable practices in the world. So it's a nice, it makes me feel good because I'm there's way more to my life and the world than solving one math problem.
I like what Glenn is saying here because she's speaking to two complementary skill sets, figuring out a problem and going through the steps to solve it, and also understanding a problem as a whole. So how do students get these tools from seeking sustainability? They start by learning concepts, ideas, and intellectual tools from a series of readings. To ensure they get what they need from every reading, students fill out and turn in a set of questions called takeaways each class. Kelly and Mark talked to me a bit about these assignments and how they change over the course of the semester.
Yeah, so the assignments for the class are mostly just the reading assignments, which are usually about 2 every week, and then the midterm and final exam.
And the reading assignments being the takeaway worksheets.
So those are more completion-based than content-based.
And I think they're great. So they're not even graded. We grade them, but it's graded on completion, not on correctness. And I think in the beginning of the semester, students, when they're before the midterm exam, they just do these assignments, but they don't actually put their whole. They don't necessarily do the assignments, but
to the best of their ability.
Yeah, to the best. They're just doing it for completion. But then after the midterm, and they realize that you have to utilize all this information in these readings in the midterm, they really embrace the readings.
The responses aren't the only things that change in the takeaways throughout the course of the semester. Dr. Baird makes an effort to change up the questions as well, getting students to take on the responsibility of figuring out what they need from each reading. He also ensures that they are finding connections between one week and another.
There's 2 types of questions that I ask. One is hey, this is important information, let's go find it. Page 22, the author says this. Or what does the author say? Or how does X relate to Y? And the author's going to tell you on page 22. Because I want them to see something. This is an important piece of content. I want them to be exposed. I want them to kind of go hunt that thing down and find it and get it. And the other is using, where I want them to use the content, to have an idea or to reach farther. So more at the beginning of the semester, more of the questions are kind of, I refer to them as hunting questions, hunting some bit of information down. And towards the end of the semester, there's more using questions. Let's apply this. Let's apply this in your life. Let's apply this in your roommate's life. Let's say, well, how would this author from 2 weeks ago respond to this thing that this author said today? Now we're using content as opposed to just pinning it down, identifying it and holding on to it.
In contrast with the very directed, very specific takeaways for each reading, the midterm and final were an entirely different beast.
And then for the midterm, I just zoom way out and say, how are things connected? Well, what things? Things that we read about and discussed.
You have to make an argument and support it using material from the class. So I asked them a really ambitious question. This is just a hard question to answer. But I try to, over the course of the first half of the semester say, let's look at how these things are connected, and let's look at how these other things are connected, and let's look at how those things are connected. And this is all very important because in sustainability, when we try to fix one problem, if we don't know how that thing or the things that compose that problem are connected to other things, then we're gonna disrupt elsewhere. We're gonna break other things as we fix this thing.
To me, the midterm and final seem to be incredibly daunting, and as group assignments where students have to come to a consensus about their answers to the questions, even harder. But working in groups comes with advantages, particularly in the types of lessons learned.
My observations about people who have jobs outside of higher education or who are not professors is that they work with people. They work with people all the time. And there's drama and there's success and there's teamwork and there's triumph and there's failure and there's all this. And I think that group work makes things harder, but it makes things better. And if we're going to save the planet, we're not going to do it as a group of individuals, we're going to do it as a team. So we're going to do the exam this way. So this way, I can meet administrators' expectations to kind of grow the size of the class, which was always the expectation. And I get to continue to give them an assignment that asks them to do a lot of reading and a lot of writing and make and support an argument that inherently is subjective.
The assignments all set students up to broaden their thinking, to find, identify, and provide solutions to big questions. How does their time in class support this process? How are they learning to think when they're with each other? Next time in our active learning story.